intro. Hello and welcome to our Money Month webinar, where we will do something that's all too difficult to find time to do these days. We will pause and get some pretty important money things sorted. Now, I am Frances Cook. I'm the investments editor for BusinessDesk. I will be guiding us through the chat today. So maybe just drop some compliments about me into the chat and butter me up, and then I'll make sure that it's your question that gets answered when it comes time for that. In all seriousness, we will have time for questions. So as we're having this chat, drop them in as they occur to you. This is your time to get some help with whatever has been on your mind. And it's been tough times lately. Inflation is up. Trip to the supermarket can send you into shock. Interest rates are up. Mortgage is causing serious pain. There are so many things to be worried about with your money, I know, but we also really need to take the time to future-proof ourselves. And the good thing about some of these future issues that we'll be talking about today is they can often be sorted out and then left alone for a while. So let's take the opportunity to answer these questions, get one worry off the plate, one thing off your mind. And we do know that people are worried about this. We've got the Public Trust Intergenerational Wealth Research that showed 98% of people want to leave a legacy, 98%, mostly to provide for children and family. And it might be financial assets or something else, but either way, it does usually need to be documented in some way. And yet, only about half of us have a will in place, and only 17% of New Zealanders have an enduring power of attorney. So perhaps it's not surprising that we don't actually have much peace of mind on this issue, because 15% of us feel that our assets are very well protected, and 45% of us feel they are somewhat well protected. And that leaves a lot of people not feeling very good at all. So let's get those numbers up today. Let's figure out this issue, what's right in different situations, and giving you the confidence to go and figure out the next steps for your individual situation. Of course, we do have to remind you, the disclaimer, we will be talking generally here. We do not know your individual situation, and your individual situation can change things. But take the information that's here, the general rules of the game, and then adapt it to your own personal needs or use it to go and find out more. Now, that is quite enough waffle out of me. Reminder again, for anyone who's just joined, there will be questions. Drop them into the chat as you go. Until then, let me introduce our wonderful panelists who will be helping us figure it all out today. First up, Glenys Talivai, CEO of Public Trust, who will be talking about the importance of passing on what matters to your loved ones and the barriers that many of us face to getting our life plans in place, as well as the value of having them. We also have Helena Harbrow, General Manager Product Development from life insurance company Partners Life. Helena will help demystify the different types of life insurance and what situations it can work well for. Last but never least, Kauen Nauer from Kiwibank, who will run us through how you get your financial house in order, including a rainy day fund, getting in control of spending, debt, and of course, staying alert to frauds and scamsters. Glenys, starting with you, what does it mean when we talk about getting your affairs in order? Who should be doing this?
Well, when we talk about getting your affairs in order, it's really about making sure that you have an up-to-date will and enduring powers of attorney in place, and it's something we all need to do so that we can protect what matters most for our whānau and friends. Most people know what a will is, but many have a lot less understanding about enduring powers of attorney. And so enduring powers of attorney are legal documents that help you to make sure that your well-being, your property and your finances are taken care of by a person or an organisation you trust if you were to have an accident or suffer a serious illness, that for any reason you weren't able to manage those things yourself. Now, in general, there are two kinds of enduring powers of attorneys, or EPA we call them for short. One is for your personal care and welfare. So that's someone to make decisions about your welfare, your health. They might engage with medical professionals if needed. And one for your property and financial assets. So to make financial decisions. And importantly, if you lose what we call mental capacity. So again, through an accident, you might get a brain injury or another illness like dementia or Alzheimer's. Legally, this means that someone else is able to make big, important decisions about your finances and medical treatments or care when you're not able to. So that's making sure the bills are paid, that the mortgage is paid, that someone's making sure that your children or your loved ones are being looked after if they're dependent on you. And of course, someone's making sure that you're being really well looked after, particularly if you've had an accident. So, it's a really important piece around thinking into the future. Probably another point I'd make is that an EPA only comes into effect if you actually need it. But with a property EPA, you can actually, even though you can still make decisions, get somebody authorised to make financial transactions for you. So a good example of that is if you're heading overseas, you wanted to purchase a property, you could get your enduring power of attorney to make that transaction for you back here in New Zealand while you weren't there. So but going back to it, particularly, the scenario that anything could happen at any time, hopefully it doesn't, but if it does, this is a great form of protection to have in place alongside things like your life insurance and your will. So, I mean, importantly, I think for many people, and, Francis, you said earlier, only 17% of adults actually have an enduring power of attorney today, is if you need it and you don't have it, it's actually pretty painful for your whānau and friends to do those things for you. So if you're not able to make your own decisions and you don't have an EPA, then the only alternative is to go to the court to get an order. And of course, because you're in the situation that you're in, who the judge might appoint to make those decisions for you might not be how you might have envisioned it if you'd taken control of that yourself. And also too, I would also point out that the cost of doing that after the fact far exceeds the cost of preparing an EPA in the first place. So some really important documents to get your affairs in order alongside your will. And if you've got more than $15,000 in a KiwiSaver right now, then you really need to be thinking about getting a will and letting your friends and whānau know what you want to have happen with not only your money, but the things that are really important to you after you pass away. So that gives them certainty, gives you certainty. And again, similar to what I was talking about in EPA, means that you're not relying on the court system or other legislation to carry that out for you. I think there's a really key piece for people here around taking control and getting that in place.
Yes, I do think the KiwiSaver is going to be an issue that sneaks up on a lot of people. Actually, it builds up in there surprisingly quickly, and then you've got a rather large asset that you do need to have a plan for if the worst hits. Helena, life insurance, it's an important part of this process, right? But I know from the questions that people send me that they find the number of different policies confusing and they're not really sure where to start. So how do we figure out the different types of cover and which one might be right for us?
Kia ora koutou. Yeah, these are great broad questions. And I think I'm going to talk about what life insurance intends to do rather than kind of get caught up in that process piece. But we can talk a bit more about that later. I want to set that scene with insurance because we typically start talking about insurance, about things, about cars, about a house. Big significant events happen and your insurance is there to help pay or fix it. You can see it. It's your car, you've been in an accident, or the trampoline has blown up and taken out the side of your house, which also has the door to the garage, and then you've lost your car as well. This is real in Wellington weather. These are big things. And we're not talking about the broken light in the toilet or the toilet being blocked. Those are important things and you want to get them fixed, right? And you can see them. But We're talking about those things that sideswipe us, that we don't know, we're not prepared for. And that's what I think about when I think about life insurance. It's quite similar, but it's taking out a policy on you to protect against those sideswiped moments, that trampoline taking over your whole house, you not being able to live there. What do you do, right? So when we think about it, about life insurance, it's about the impact to you and to those around you. And we all have very different circumstances to how we live and who supports us and who we support. So we're thinking about that broader environment, our broader whānau, our friends, our community that we play a role in. And we think about life cover. So life insurance, essentially, I'm going to talk about three main areas: life cover, in living benefits or living cover. For life, it's a bit of play on words. We're really talking about death cover, right? What happens when you die? And you're not prepared for that. I don't know if many people really are. This is when, we all have a vision that we're going to live to a particular age and we're going to be beautiful and die peacefully. Actually, reality is that's probably not going to happen. We can see that in the statistics, and I don't know about you, but I'm going to so many funerals these days and hardly any births or weddings. Not putting out more wedding invites, but I love it, right? So these are the things that are happening to us now. So what is this about? This is about a payment, should that worst happen. And it's actually about taking you out of the picture. You're not there. Who are the people around you? What support are we providing them financially? And we can't take away that emotional burden, but goodness, we can help support them so they can focus on those memories, that other legacy that you wanted to leave behind. So that's what a death piece is, and it's kind of brutal. So we don't like talking about it because we don't like thinking we're invincible, right? So that's one part about it. And then we have what we call, and part of that death benefit though too is, if you're really terminal, we pay out earlier, right? And so you can get your financial affairs in order, but you're already in a really bad position because you're terminal. You're not expected, to live for very long, and it's not a good time. And it's hard to think about that. The other things that we look into is into living benefits, and there are two kind of key areas there. And we use different, we're insurance companies. We use some jargon. We're trying hard to do better in this space, but there's decades, millennial of people who have been involved in creating these beautiful words. So we talk about trauma, and we talk about disability cover, and we talk about critical. These are key words and terms that you'll hear across the industry. Critical condition cover. These are living benefits, so they're intended to respond while you're alive. But again, for those big sideswipe moments, right? You've been diagnosed with a serious illness or a trauma. These are severe heart attacks, strokes, big things. Not your cold. No, it's not going to help. This is not going to kick in. But those big moments that you need that support with, that's what that's meant to come in for. And it can help you so you focus on healing, recovering, and also looking at what your life might look like now, how you live with that injury or that illness. Might be renovations to the house. These are big things. And then the other is that I want to talk about is income protection cover. Right? Again, serious illness, disability happens, and you can't work. You can't generate an income. What does that mean? What does it mean for your family? How do you pay your mortgage? How do you pay your heating? How do I pay for, if you've got kids, just everything about them, right? They are walking bills. I love them to pieces, but everything you've got to do with that. Yeah, so who looks after you and who looks after those important people in your life? Those are kind of the three key areas around in a life insurance space. We're talking about life or death, let's call it what it is. And we're talking about trauma or income protection, okay? And those are really important pieces in how they're intended to pay out. So income protection is intended to respond to those events and supplement and provide some income while you recover. We're always looking at how you recover, but it's hard if you're thinking about the financial burden that you're providing to your family and your loved ones, And then we think about what's right for me. And I hate to be a cliche, but we need to have financial advice, right? We're diverse and we have diversity in thought, diversity in values, and what's important for me is very different to what might be important to you. So, we need to explore that conversation with people who can actually have that tailored advice with you and talk about mortgage, education. What are those important things for you that you want to reflect, and what do you value for yourself, right? How do we place that value on ourselves? And it's hard. They're hard conversations, but this is a great opportunity to pause and reflect and go out and take that first step. If you haven't already, really encourage you to get in contact with us. Obviously, I'll put a plug in for Partners Life. Go to our website. You've got a piece that you can get in touch with the financial advisor, and we'll help point you in that direction. But let's get those plans in place so that, we're not going to be sideswiped by the unexpected, because it can happen at any time. I hope that's helpful.
No, I really think so. And I think so much of this is, as you say, it comes down to a lot of your values. I mean, I always say to people that the numbers of money is one thing, but your values will really impact whether those numbers are right for you or not. So, Kauen, when it comes to doing better with our money, I mean, is there some groundwork that all of us can be putting in place? What are some of the priorities for our financial well-being?
Yeah, thanks, Francis. I think sort of just be reflecting on that question, and also thinking about, we know that we need to eat better. We know that we need to exercise more. Knowing that we've got to get our financial affairs into order, knowing that we need to get some good financial basics in place is no different. Because when the hard times hit and you're under pressure financially, having those good financial basics in place can help you get through. So what I'd like to perhaps talk to is about that good financial well-being, and perhaps 5 things that may help people. And I think you find as we talk through it, it's not rocket science. We've probably all heard some of these priorities. We've probably heard all of these elements before, right? And the first one is just about getting in control of your everyday spending. So knowing where your money is going. And a lot of people go, oh, he's talking about a budget. Yep, I'm talking about a budget. All right. So have a think about that. Your everyday spending, you've got to track what's happening with your money. All right. It's one of the key fundamentals in terms of good basic financial well-being. To make things easier, look at setting up a separate account that you can, each payday, you can transfer a set amount across that covers your fixed bills, covers your fixed costs, so that you know how much you have left over, right? And once you start doing that, it then gives you it enables you, it helps you to look at the other priorities. And one of the other ones that a lot of us think about, we want to get onto, but we never do, it is actually putting some money aside for a rainy day. So we know bad things will happen. The car will break down, or the window will get broken. Something will happen, right? And if you've got a rainy fund set aside, if you've got some money, hopefully you can put aside at least 3 months, preferably 6 months worth of expenses. Put it aside so that if that emergency does happen, it's not going to add to any additional stress or anxiety. It doesn't mean you go out and do crisis borrowing, where potentially you're looking at high interest rate loans just to try and get through that emergency, right? So really think about how you can put money aside for a rainy day. And then the third one, it's really about looking after yourself. So pay yourself first. Once you've made clear of that budget, once you've started to build up a bit of a rainy day fund, have a think about putting some money aside for yourself. We want our well-being as well, in terms of setting ourselves some goals, treating ourselves, having some fun. But the only way you're going to do that is if you look to pay yourself first, right? So have a think about how you build that into your financial well-being as well. Now, the fourth one may sound a little bit weird, but it's about protecting your credit rating, all right? So what I'm talking about there is just make sure that you do pay down your bills, that you are paying your debt. We know that debt is necessary. Debt is not bad if it's used responsibly. So it can help, if you keep your credit rating nice and clean, it can help you achieve the goals later on in life that you want to achieve, where you may want to go out and get a loan, where you may want to go out and get a mortgage and look to buy your first home. So you've got to make sure that you protect your credit rating. The one of the things that you can do is, if you are finding debt a challenge, I'd really encourage you to reach out to your debt service provider. It's always better to have that conversation with them first. Let them know the challenges you're going through. We all want to make sure that we're there to help support you, to help you get through that challenging time. So if you don't reach out and ask us, if you don't reach out and let us know that you're finding challenges, we're not going to know. So please make sure that you contact your service provider and have that chat if you're finding things challenging. And then the fifth one, Francis, was I think you spoke about, which is really topical at the moment, is to protect your money. Now, what I mean by that in terms of protecting your money is educate yourself up on scams and fraud and financial abuse, right? There is a lot of information on bank websites that you can go into and have a look and see what are the current scams, what are the current things happening that are, putting people's bank accounts at risk. It's really important that you educate yourself up on what's happening in that particular area to protect your money. Financial abuse can happen to anyone. Okay, it can happen from even the most trusted person. So you've got to make sure that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. No bank is going to send you a link and ask you to click on it to verify your accounts. No bank's going to ask you for your PIN number. So if you have any doubts or any concerns, please contact your bank, have a chat to them, and make sure that you protect your money. So, those are probably the 5 principles. If you think about good financial basics, get in control of your spending, put aside money for a rainy day, look to pay yourself first, have a bit of fun, reward yourself for the great work that you're doing, pay down your debt, and then make sure that you protect your money and educate yourself up on scams and keeping your account safe. And hopefully you do that, you're on track for good financial well-being.
Oh, absolutely. And I think your point there about looking into the scams and frauds, it's so important. I just did some work on this, and one of the big danger zones for getting sucked into a scam is thinking that you won't, thinking that you're the sort of person who won't get caught out. That makes you the most likely to get caught out, because they really prey on that confidence. And it means that a lot of people get sucked into this who you maybe wouldn't expect. Very smart people. None of us are above it. Glenys, I think many of us probably do know. I mean, to Kauen's point earlier about how we know that we need to do things like eat well and exercise. I mean, no need to personally attack me, mate. I have literally today been trying to increase my cardio because it's just ridiculous how little I move in a day. And I think something like a will probably does fall into that category too, right? I mean, these issues are on our minds. We know that it's important. We don't get around to it for whatever reason. Do we have any insights into what holds people back on this?
Yeah, look, we do, Francis. And I think first and foremost, talking about our money and then thinking about into the future, to what Helena was talking about, that, one day we might die or someone that we love is going to pass away. That doesn't make us feel good, for a start. So we tend to avoid things that don't make us feel good. That's just a natural kind of human piece. And then it is quite hard to think about the future and what do I want to have happen. And these are big decisions. They're quite confronting. Usually I have this mantra, is that usually if it's a bit tough, it's probably more worthwhile. It's probably something that we really need to lean into. And, our research is showing, and this is research that we do and see time and time again, but really it's a mixture of things. I think, we as Kiwi, we're great around she'll be right, she'll be all good, someone will work it out. The reality is that often it won't be us if we're in the situation that we're trying to avoid. It's going to be our whānau and friends. And I think that's what I would appeal to, is really thinking about, we do really care about people in our lives. And actually one of the greatest gifts we can give them is real certainty around what our wishes are through a will. Or equally, real certainty about who do I want to have look after my affairs or make decisions for me if I can't make them for myself. And So whilst it's something that's quite scary or confronting for people, equally we hear from our customers time and time again that once they've actually gone through the process and done this, the empowerment and actually the peace of mind and how fulfilling that is really rewarding. But it's getting people to take that next step and activate, because I think I mentioned earlier, often people know what a will is. More and more are learning about an enduring power of attorney, but we're not quite getting there to activate. And it is a bit about our busyness. It is a bit about money, affordability. These things sound expensive. Maybe that's a bit of a barrier. Most though, if we're getting into that activation, it really is then about, well, hold on, this is a bit tricky. And one of these things I think that I've realised is that, we do see a lot of people who sadly have needed a will or an enduring power of attorney. They haven't got there, and of course, you can't get it after it's too late when you actually need it, and that's really challenging because we see that time and time again. And so some of these barriers are really real for people. And there is this piece around in all of my purchasing choices that I can make, particularly around my finances. These things feel like, well, I don't need it right now. And so we put it off, we put it off, we put it off. But I would say, this is really about taking control. This is about planning. This is about protecting the things that you have and what matters for you. Remembering that wills aren't just about who gets your money or your things. It's actually about who's going to look after your children, your pets. You might have some really special tonga in your family or heirlooms that are passed down, and where you want those to go. This is actually really important, quite deep things that are really emotionally important to people. And so, my advice to people out there, if you're thinking about it, I think for a lot of people, it's like Kauen said, we know we need, we should do some of these things, is actually, and this is what Money Month is all about, is actually how can you pause and just get some of this stuff sorted. And remember that, organisations like Public Trust or your lawyer, even if you're sitting down with, someone who you trust to help guide you through those conversations, get the expert advice that you need, and recognise actually that gift that you're going to give back to the people that you really care about the most, which is often a core part of people's values and their own, no matter what culture they come from. There is a really great outcome that comes out of that. And Helena talked a little bit about the peace of mind that you get to know that actually, the people that are dependent on you, whether or not it's through life insurance, a will, or an enduring power of attorney, actually they're able to go on and function and able to honour you and what you would have liked, whether you're there or you've had an illness or whatever's going on there. It's actually really something that's quite important to them, and ultimately I would say would be a legacy that you won't regret working through. Now, I touched quite briefly, and we started off today, there is a lot going on, and let's be fair, just with it, we can lean into budgets and all the rest of it, but affordability is often also a barrier, and this perception of, well, to write a will in an EPA, don't I need a lawyer? And geez, lawyers are quite expensive. They might charge a bit of money, and all the rest of it is that a reminder that not having one is often going to cost you a whole lot more in the long run. But this is something that we've been really passionate about, in terms of bridging this gap for people. And so, there's lots of options to go online, to do this in your own time, to chip away at it. And just remember, there are people that can give you advice and help you on that journey in terms of working through these things. And, all you need to do is get started. I think we all find that, if we just get started, no matter what it is, then it just gets easier and easier and easier the way once we're able to lean into it. And so I would say that, look, there is really affordable options. People, again, similar to what Helena said, they can check out our website, but there are many more options in terms of in your local communities. to do this, and it really is going to save you in the long run. But most importantly, it's going to protect the things that matter most to you.
Yeah, and I see that we have had a question in the chat about that. Jessie saying, been procrastinating. I think we've all been there. And how much should you be thinking if you're wanting to budget for getting a will and an EPA sorted? I mean, as you say, there's a really wide range. There are different options. What sort of range should people be expecting?
Yeah, so look, I mean, it depends on your circumstances and how complex. So if you take a will, for example, how complex that might be, like how much stuff you have, what you want to do. But, a pretty standard, if you've got basic things, that starts at under $100 online to put a will in place. And we've got people who will chat with you and walk alongside you through that process. For those that have more complex needs, i.e., if you're like me and you have a blended family, it can get a little bit tricky pretty quickly in terms of how you're going to start to think about everybody. You can come in and see somebody in our customer centre, and you might pay around $400 for that, depending on what's going on. So it's there is a variety. Even more complex pieces, I think it depends on the advice that you need, right? So, but it does start actually really competitively. And, if you're able to work through that on your own, the cheaper that it is. For an enduring power of attorney, you're looking at around $300 per attorney, remembering you often need two. And then if you're doing it with a partner and you've got some similar things, then there's opportunities there too, where you can mirror each other's wishes that might be packaged up there. So it really does depend on your circumstances. And obviously there's lots of other options out there. Even I'm just talking about public trust, but there's lots of other options out there too.
Helena, we've talked a lot there about some of the barriers people face when they're thinking about wills. What about the barriers to life insurance? Is there any myth busting you want to do today?
Yeah, look, it's a really great question. I think there's, as Glenys was pointing out, there is some perceptions versus reality. And there's also, as Kauen was talking about, protection around your money. And, we talk about life insurance as being that financial protection and putting that big rainy day savings away for when that unexpected, piece occurs. I think it's all intertwined in that way, but we have a real challenge from an insurance perspective to debunk these perceptions that it's hard to take out life insurance and that it's only for the wealthy or for a certain demographic of society, because it really isn't. And we have a wide range of options available for customers, because it's actually about affordability, and it's about trying to set in place something, today for the future that's going to be suitable for you kind of going forward for the rest of your life and wherever you are at the stage that you come in and talk to us about it. So I guess I would really encourage, and that talking about it, we're really working hard across the industry, not just Partners Life, just all insurers. We're trying to provide different ways, different avenues to break down that accessibility piece. We've got options that you could try to, we can do a lot of the application piece online. We have internal advisors who can actually just, phone you, because it's time, right? We're taking time away from our busy lives doing something. Let's be honest, it's admin related, right? And it's talking about you or me, and it's about those kind of pointy questions, because we have to ask questions to understand more about you and your health background and your medical history. These are gnarly questions, don't get me wrong, and they're confronting. And having to sit down and take time out for somebody to ask you that, it's who you don't necessarily know straight away, and build up that rapport with them. It's hard. I'm not gonna downplay that, but it's really important to get these things in place. And the sooner you do it, the more kind of flex you can and more levers, that you can pull to make sure that it is affordable for you long term, because that's actually when you need it and when you want it. It's not just today, it's actually for your future. And so that advice conversation is really important to kind of hone down into those values that we've all been talking about today. That's really important for you to support your legacy and to support what you want, to be able to still function and live well, and hopefully not just survive, but to thrive, going forward. So I just, I think you mentally prepare to get asked some brutal questions, right? About all sorts of stuff. I'm a lady about gynecological problems. Not going to lie. They're going to ask me about that. Get prepared for it. Guys, get prepared to be asked some pretty gnarly questions about what's going on downstairs. And then go into the fact of, we're going to ask about your income, money. We don't like talking about it. Let's just know that we're going to look after that information for you, because we've a lot of systems and processes and security going on behind the scenes. Don't you worry, a lot happening. But we need to understand this so that we can then assess the risk of claiming. And the more information we know, the more opportunities that we can look at making it right for you and fit for purpose, so that our promise at claims time, because that's what we're all about, right? At claims time, it responds as intended, as you expect and as we expect. We are in the business of paying claims. All insurers are, and that's what we want to do for all Kiwis. A statistic for Partners Life, I think, is 89. We pay over 89% of claims. We also have a health insurance piece as well, so we count all of those claims within our numbers, and that's another piece that we talk about as well. It's another part to supplement, our great public health system. It's around, sometimes it's supporting it. The role that we play in a private insurer is to help support that and help to support our people to get them recovered faster, and to ensure that they're healing well. So I think, just be prepared is my thing, and it's available for everybody. This is an affordable option, but it's based on what you value. And I would, as Kawen's pointed out, and Glenys has pointed out as well, there are priorities that you have to make. But don't think that this is not an option for everyone, because it is. It's really good to kind of have these conversations and understand those options that are available to you, and just have that conversation. Take that moment. Take time. And I just say as well, if you do have insurance already and you have an EPA in place, share it with us. Share it with your insurer, because then they have that in place. They can actually take those communications from other people who are acting on your behalf in those vulnerable times when you need us, right? It's about how do we all support you.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. Love that. I mean, Kauen, I think a lot of banks have a front row seat to these issues, right? Because you're often quite involved in the day-to-day lives of your customers, more so than a lot of other financial institutions. So what sort of impact does it have when obviously something goes wrong and then there is a will or the enduring power of attorney or insurance is in place? I mean, what does this look like for people?
Yeah, look, I'll probably talk from two personal experiences that I've had, one with an EPA and one with life insurance. And the EPA one, that came pretty late for me in terms of, from a personal experience, our elderly mother having a fall, as a family getting together and just talking about what do we need to do to make sure that we support mum? What do we need to do to make sure that if she had another fall, we could step in and help and support her, not only financially, obviously, but also in terms of helping her with her accounts. So that fall was a bit of a trigger for us to go and talk to our local professional. And I think one of the biggest learnings I had from that was to make sure that we went in as a family, we all agreed on what was going to happen if mum had an accident. and couldn't look after herself. We all agreed what we needed to do in terms of accessing the accounts and keeping mum's bills getting paid, etc. So collectively as a family, we took that responsibility. And I think what I really appreciated is when we went through the process of setting up the EPA, that the professional was able to ask us the right questions to help us consider how we were going to set that up. Consequently, after we'd set up the EPA, mum became diagnosed with dementia. And we've slowly had to take over her affairs with it. And I think one of the best things that we did is we took the EPA down to our local bank. We went down with all the required documentation, and I probably think this is probably a key thing for people to remember is take down the EPA and make sure we take all the other relevant documentation so that the bank can take that EPA, they can lodge it, they can make sure that you've got access to your loved one or your family members' accounts, so that you can, make the pay the bills, etc. It's very dangerous just to think that you can grab your mum's debit card or credit card and get the PIN number off her and keep using that. That doesn't always work. At some point, that's going to fall over, right? So it's really important that you have that EPA in place. And I think by putting that in place for us, and yes, we had to work with the bank to get the documentation set up. But for myself, coming from the banking industry, I know where I've had people come in and say, this has happened, can we get access to the accounts? I'm going, no, you can't. We're mandated by the signing authority, we're mandated by the account holder that they're the only ones that can access it. So it's a really difficult situation, and emotionally, it's quite tough, right? But having the EPA in place takes that away, right? So probably, key thing is, visit your local professional, talk it through as a family if that's really important for you. And then make sure that you lodge the documents in advance, just like what Helena was saying, so that the banks know if something happens, we've already got it. All right, we can get working straight away as soon as possible to put that support in place. And then I think when I think about life insurance, I've count myself really fortunate that I've helped a lot of Kiwi achieve their dream of owning their home. Right, but with that comes a responsibility. Right, we're talking about some pretty sizable mortgages for some people. And one of the responsibilities that I took really seriously was ensuring that we spoke about life insurance. At the end of the day, I didn't care who they took it with, so long as I'd had that conversation with them, that had given them pause to think about it, and also, to go away and talk to someone else to find out what was right for them. Right. At the end of the day, I wanted to make sure they had something in place that met their needs, that met their budget, that meant that if something did happen, their loved ones could be supported and looked after. And this example is probably one of the saddest times in my career in working in a bank, where I did have a family come in and say, hey, our partner, our loved one has passed away. What do we do? Now, the great thing is they had life insurance, right? So we were able to pay the mortgage off. It meant that the family could stay in their home, right? The kids could keep going to the same school. It meant that they could stay there and work out how they were going to move forward as a family. So probably one of the saddest days of my life, having to front into that, but also one of the proudest, knowing that they had some life insurance in place, they had some protection in place. So, when you talk about the difficult things that happen and what it means for our customers, as a bank, and all banks are in the same position, we're there to support you, right? So if you have any questions about your accounts, if you have any, things you want to talk about in terms of your mortgage, or, I've got an EPA that I want to bring in, please contact your bank, right? The sooner we have the documentation, the sooner we're aware of it. And if something happens, we can move to support, and work with the other partners as well, public trust, life partners as well. We can work together to keep the support going.
Yeah, Really good points there. And we're going to quickly jump into questions because I want to make sure we can whip through as many of these as possible. I see Jessie apologizing for asking 3. No, Jessie, you're my favorite. Keep asking questions, and everyone else, get those questions in now, whether it's in the Q&A or the chat. I'm checking both. So jump in, ask those questions. Let's make the most of this opportunity, right? Glenys, I'll start with you. A great question from Kent. What happens if you don't have a will when you die? Do families seek to settle things through a judge in court? I must admit, when I looked into the default of what happens when you don't have a will, it wasn't what I expected. So tell us.
Yeah, so if you die and you don't have a will, it's called what we call dying intestate. And depending on the assets that you have, the Administrations Act will determine how they are distributed. Now, that being said, those people that might think that, or family members or a partner or whatever the dynamic could be, which could be varying depending on your situation, they might come to what's called a deed of family arrangement, where they all agree together, this is what's going to happen. You still need to go through that process as an alternative to what might happen under the Administrations Act. Now, you can look that up online, but basically there's a formula that depends on your particular situation, and that formula will say this is who's going to get what. And so, and it varies because it's going to depend if you've got a partner, if your parents are still alive, if you had children, if you've got brothers and sisters, what other next of kin. Of course, there may be other people who randomly you might have said, hey, when I die, you can have my house. And if you've done that and haven't written it in a will, then they also might come a calling to say, hey, look, we had this conversation, and whether or not that's the piece. So it can get quite complex pretty quickly, but there is a piece of legislation that guides that decision-making process. So may or may not be what you had envisioned would happen if you haven't gone and put those plans in place yourself.
Yeah, and Kauen, I think we'll bounce this one your way. If someone changes banks, do you need to have your EPA documents amended, or are they suitable for any bank?
It probably crossed over into Glenys's area as well, that no, you don't. All right, it's a transferable document across.
That's right.
And for you, Helena, a life insurance question. Now, I am just going to say, of course, just a reminder that as we go through these questions, that we can only talk generally. We don't know you. We haven't gone through your accounts. We haven't gone through your personal situation. So we're just going to be doing the best with the general rules based on the info we have. But this question, life insurance, part of the staff benefits through my work is that I have light life illness cover. Given it's so light, I'm planning to get a higher level of cover through another insurance provider. How does that work with having 2 covers? If something happens, can you claim through both? What goes on? Helena.
Yeah, look, great question. And firstly, awesome that your employer has something in place for you, right? Like, big ups right there, because we're trying to encourage more employers to be thinking about this type of benefit for staff. So congrats, firstly. And I think secondly, then, without giving financial advice or knowing your personal circumstances, yes, you can claim under both, depending on the type of benefits that the cover offers. I don't know that particular type of cover. I don't know this light life illness cover, but it sounds like it would respond, if it was a serious illness from a terminal death perspective. So you can always, employers are just providing blanket types of cover, something for their employees, right? That's not necessarily on your individual circumstances. So going and having that conversation with somebody else about what's right for you and your values, that really counts, so that you can actually have that, get more cover in place or different types to respond for different kind of events. So definitely, Jessie, that sounds, it's really great, and it's a great conversation for you to have.
Yeah.
I don't know if Kauen had anything else to add to that from a 2 claims perspective. That's what we've had.
No, exactly covers that, Helena. I'm probably in the same boat where I've got a great work policy, but I've also got one that I've had for quite a while. So you just run them in tandem.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Now, I've got 2 questions here that I'm going to group together and I'm going to send them your way, Glenys. When it comes to preparing a will, is it possible to future-proof the will for upcoming life changes, e.g. marriage and a child or 2 might be on the cards over the next few years? That's exciting. Do we have to rewrite our wills every time one of these changes takes place? Which is a great question. And then I'm just going to quickly whip down through to the other question, very similar. Any advice on new relationships and wills? What sort of time frame for updating, etc.? So bundle those questions up, throw them your way. Glenys, thoughts?
So first and foremost, I think if you've got a will in place and your situation's changed, i.e. you've got a new partner, a marriage, or you're saying goodbye to a partner that you once had, perhaps, or you're having children, you should always think about, is your will still relevant to your situation, and are things still flowing in a way that you'd like? So if that makes sense, or so is it still reflecting your wishes? Now, if you're not yet in a scenario where you're still looking to meet that person or thinking in the future about children, there are ways that you can incorporate that into writing your initial will in terms of thinking about that possible future. Once that future, though, eventuates or not, we'd always encourage you to review and update if it's not reflecting as you had envisioned, because how you think about things today, because this is the key thing, right? You're thinking about the future, and then as your situation changes, you might welcome different people or say goodbye to people in your life and the like. It's really important that you revisit these legal documents. I'd also just go a step further, Francis, because I noticed there was a few questions in there too. It's also really important that you think about who you appoint as your attorney. Who's going to make decisions about your welfare and who's going to make decisions about your finances. Now, what we see as a common pitfall here is that we tend to appoint either our partner or a friend or someone that we know really well, and they're often at the same life stage as us, right? Or because they know us really well. Now, it actually doesn't help you if something has happened to them before you need them to be your attorney. It actually means that the person that you've appointed can't actually enact that role. So your EPA doesn't become relevant. And then for some of us, we don't have that person. And so there are organisations like Public Trust. You could appoint a legal firm or another professional trustee organisation that will be more enduring. But you do need to think about, like, for example, appointing your parents, they might predecease you. So just think about the longevity of those things. And that's the same with a will. Keep revisiting it, keep updating it as your situation changes, always best. And I would say, please don't wait, don't hesitate. We never know what's around the corner.
Yeah. And I know we're running up on time here. I just want to squeeze this one in because I know this is a big fear for a lot of people. So this is an anonymous question. How do you ensure an enduring power of attorney is not made under coercion, and can it be contested?
Yeah, so, and this is something that comes up quite a bit. So the key thing is we have, I certainly, and I know that this would be the case for other legal firms that put these in place. There are processes in place where we look for if there's any coercion or, is the person doing this of their own free will and the like. And we have processes that we utilise to make an assessment around that. Now, this being said, I do want to be open about, sometimes we appoint an attorney and whilst we think, hey, this person's going to operate in my best interests when I can't make decisions for myself, we certainly do have some scenarios where, particularly when it comes to the finance or property attorney, where there is scenarios where actually maybe they're using the money in a way that's not really good for that person's interest, but maybe might be a bit better for their own interests. And those types of questions come up. And so if there is ever any concerns over somebody and how they're operating as someone's attorney, then that is something that you should immediately escalate or raise or seek advice around. And that's certainly something that people often come to us about. So and this is another role that public trust plays in those types of scenarios, obviously at the more in-depth end. And I'm sure Kauen would see a bit of this at the banking end, where there is a bit of scrutiny around this. Now, generally that's not the case, but this is why this decision is so important. In terms of, who are you giving control of your bank accounts to and your finances to? It's a really, really important decision. And sometimes getting that to be a step away from someone who knows you really well, or so that they can actually just be your support person and the person who cares about you and is your family member or friend, is a really good outcome. And that's where you might think about a more professional organisation that's got that distance, that's able to make some of those decisions.
I love that. All right. Well, apologies to anyone whose question we didn't get to. There has been a lot of great discussion today, and now we are unfortunately out of time. So I hope the most burning questions were answered. One thing I'd really like to say is I love having these money chats. There is a danger in them too. It is not enough to just talk about all of this wonderful stuff. We do also have to put it into action. So just one thing I'd love is if you have a think about what you've heard today and have a think about what feels like the biggest priority for you. And then just pick one thing, just one, that you put into action. Do it. Don't wait. Get that one thing done. If you would like to know more about public trust, you can head to publictrust.co.nz. Partners Life is partnerslife.co.nz, and you can get more info from kiwibank.co.nz as well, keeping it nice and simple there. And of course, we are all also here because it is Sorted Money Month. So if you want to check out their great range of info and money tools, that is sorted.org.nz. Thank you so much to our panelists for sharing all of your wonderful knowledge with us today. Thank you to everyone who tuned in. I hope this was useful for you. Ka kite, have a great rest of your day. See you later.
Ka kite.